Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the sixth episode from GoldenPi's Industry Speak series. I'm Abhijit Roy, co-founder and CEO of GoldenPi, the online platform for lakhs of users for their fixed income investment choices. For our viewers today who are attending this series for the first time, in this GoldenPi Industry Speak series, we invite the leaders from some of the most unique enterprises that are there in the market. We get into a deep discussion with the founders, promoters, the CXOs of the company, understand their business, the financials, their struggles and their success, so that at the end, if there is a fixed income investment opportunity, you are better equipped with the knowledge to take a decision. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the privilege of learning about one of the new age financial institutions in our country, Keertana Finserv Private Limited. Keertana deals into the business of providing access to capital to a hugely underserved segment of the business community, and that is micro enterprises. Along with that, Keertana also provides gold loans. We have the honor of having with us Mrs. Padmaja Reddy, who is the founder promoter of the company. She has got over 2 decades of experience, and to her credit, she has built not one but 2 successful NBFCs from 0 to 100. In her current role as a founder and CEO, she is scaling up Keertana Finserv to address a huge demand in the market. Padmaja ji, a very warm welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Along with Keertana, today we have Mr. Prashant Roy Sharma, who is the head of fixed income, mid-market lending and capital markets at Oxyzo under the brand name of Oxyzo. Oxyzo is a new age fintech that makes credit accessible to institutions through a technology-led journey. Oxyzo is working in the role of the investment banker to Keertana for raising capital. And today we will hear also Prashant's view on behalf of Oxyzo about the different perspectives of Keertana. Welcome to the show, Prashant.
Thanks, Abhijit. Thanks for having us here. It's always a pleasure talking to you and your audience.
Thank you. Pleasure to have you both on this discussion. So the first question to you, Padmaja ji. Keertana is a very unique name. It's very Indianized, beautiful name. Is there any story or background to selecting this name? It would be interesting for our viewers to know today.
Yeah, sure. I always have the story behind names. I think my entrepreneurial journey started 25 years back in 1998. Back then, I created a microfinance institution called Spandana, which is now one of the largest MFIs in India. So it was not a planned intervention back then. It happened to meet one rag picker, and after a brief introduction, gave her a loan of 2,000 rupees. Since it was an acting response to the rag picker's problem, the organization was named as Spandana. And after 25 years, when Keertana has been created, I think there is a self-realization that I'm not the creator, I'm just an instrument. The creator is somebody else. So I wanted to express a small token of my divine love to the real creator, and that is how I named this organization as Keertana. As you all know, Keertana is a form of musical expression to praise the divine.
That's a wonderful perspective, completely from a human perspective, not business, but to solve somebody's problem, and thinking that we are a small part of this universe, trying to contribute to in our own way, to helping out people out there. Right? That's a really noble cause. Now, in continuation to that, every institution, the founders that we have spoken to, we understand that the founders are passionate about some problem, some pain point that they are trying to solve, and that's what then they deep dive to use to form a company and use that as a vehicle to solve that problem. You mentioned that it was by lending a 2000 rupees to a rag picker when the whole chain started, right? A beautiful journey started in solving a problem in the society. So we would really love to know about what has been that passionate cause for you to start Keertana, and what is it that you're looking to solve here.
I will take some time here to explain how credit can really play major role in terms of poverty reduction. It was again 1998. I was working with an NGO, and we started our new office, and we were in the process of unpacking the stuff that we already bought, while setting up of the new office. So then we got some waste material, cardboard, newspaper, and instead of throwing it in the garbage, we thought that let us give it away to the rag picker. So started looking for a rag picker. So we found one rag picker going on the street, and she was loudly yelling, she will buy plastic, paper, iron, and all that stuff. So called her, and we gave away a cardboard. She gave me 9 rupees, and then she said that outside it is very, very hot. Can I just relax here for 10 minutes? I said fine, absolutely no issue. So she sat there, and I started interacting with her. I asked a few questions about the business that she is doing. She said, Amma, the business is very remunerative because people do not understand the value of the scrap. Even if we give them few bucks also, they're very, very happy. But I'm left with I earn about 60 rupees, but I'm left with only 20 rupees. And I wanted to understand where is she spending this 40 rupees? Why is she left with 20 rupees? Right. She said, I'm using a push cart for my business to keep this scrap that I collect from various households. And this push cart is not my own. I take it for rent. So I pay 10 rupees rent for the cart. And she also said that she needs working capital every morning in order to buy and again sell it in the evening. She said that she was borrowing 270 rupees every morning, and she was paying back 300 rupees every evening. At the end of the day, this loan was not outstanding. So 10 rupees is going to the cart owner towards rent, and 30 rupees as interest to the money lender, whoever is giving 270. And she said I'm just left with 20 rupees. During summer and all it is okay. Rainy season it is very, very tough because I cannot really go around and do the business. At times we have to really struggle for the food. Then I asked her a few questions. Since how long you were doing this business? She said that she was doing this business for the last 14 years. She started while she was 14, and by then she was 28 years. So then I asked her, do you know how much rent that you paid for this cart in the last 14 years? She said it's 10 rupees, so 300 rupees per month. Beyond that, I don't understand calculations. So I calculated and told her that you ended up paying 50,000 rupees rent for a cart, which would cost you 1,500 rupees, which means with the rent amount that you paid to the cart owner, you should have bought almost 30-35 carts of your own. And then I asked her every morning you are taking 270, paying 330 rupees, it's 900 rupees per month, 10,800 rupees per annum, so 14. So she ended up paying 1,50,000 rupees interest on a loan of 270, which is paid back every evening. So then I told her had you started your business with your own money of 2,000 rupees, you should have earned almost 2 lakh, and 25 years back 2 lakhs had so much of value, right? And she said, but who will give me 2,000? How can I start this business with my own capital? So we are nomadics, we keep moving from one place to other place. So then at the end of the discussion, I agreed to give her 2,000 rupees. And what she did was the next day, she invested 1,500 rupees to buy the car, and 500 rupees started using as a capital. As she was not required to pay this 30 rupees to the money lender, while she was paying 10 rupees to us That was the agreement. So her income, 20 rupees increased to 50 rupees. It was like a big impact, right? Like her income just got doubled.
Absolutely.
So this particular example made me believe that access to capital can create miracles, and you should not be doing like, so had I given her some house, like 2-bedroom house also, but it will not help her in terms of increasing her income. But a small loan of 2,000, and she started paying 10 rupees, and I was using that money to give loan to somebody else. So that has told me enough that I think the access to capital can play a major role in poverty reduction. And afterwards, like I have seen millions of examples, and particularly like you have a choice, right? Like to whom this capital can be given. And the capital to women, I think like it plays a wonderful role, because like when a money is given to lady, I think like she will not misuse, she will not go to a rat shop, she will not spend that money. Rather, like she will use that money very judiciously, and she will work for the upliftment of the family. Unfortunately, like because we still have almost like half of the population who happen to be women, but again, like because there is no motivation, because like there is no capital, so these women, like most of them, like they remained as underemployed or unemployed. And access to capital, particularly to women, plays a major role in terms of the overall economy and the overall development of the country.
Thank you, for sharing that wonderful story as to, and very lucidly explained as to how capital can be empowering. And we know for a fact that, women who are, wanting to scale up a business, be it a small or large, it has been a constant struggle to raise capital. That's a very pertinent, industry requirement, I believe, that Keertana is solving. So, when did Keertana start, and how did you structure the NBFC? How did you take up your NBFC license, right? If we can hear about the origin or the initial days of Keertana, that will be great to know.
Keertana, in fact, like started its business in April 2022. I think now we are 16 months old company. So when we decided to start with gold loans, so we started looking for an NBFC, and then again, like getting a new license will take its own time. But I was not patient. Like if idea comes, like I should execute right away. So simultaneously, we started looking for an NBFC to acquire. So then we found out Rajashri Tracker, which was incorporated almost like 20 years back, but it just remained as a dormant NBFC. So that required us to take approvals from RBI in order to acquire that NBFC. So we completed all those formalities and acquired Rajashri Tracker, and which is subsequently changed its name as Keertana Finserv Private Limited. So all that happened in April, and post-acquisition, so I started infusing equity. So in 4 different tranches, like so far 190 crore has been infused. So Keertana is an NBFC licensed by Reserve Bank of India, and having its registered office in Calcutta and administrative office here in Hyderabad. And we have 3 major verticals. One is gold loans, one is MSME, and the third one is group loans.
One is gold loans, one is MSME, and the third one is
group loans. Group loans to women. Yeah.
Okay.
So we give loans to women against group guarantee. So while like some of the women who do not have any collateral to offer as a security, so for those women, like we take group guarantee. So that will replace the collateral security.
Got it. So this gold loans, is that also something that can be used by, let's say, a small business entity being run by women to give gold as collateral and take a business loan? Is that possible, or is it gold loan only for the personal loan in the personal loan category?
Not really. Like gold loans are being used by traders, small business people big time. So basically, like the gold loans are short-term loans.
Right.
So most of the traders, if for example, like somebody is running a small fancy shop, somebody is running a book shop, so somebody else is running a stationery, all these people, so if there is a festival, so I think like if most of the women who are involved in selling saris, so their business peaks up just before the festival. So and they have to maintain like more stock in their shop to be able to sell more. So like for example, their regular working capital, say for example in a month is like 50,000, but just before Dasara, just before Sankranti, so they want to double it, or like they want to increase the stock by 3-4 times. And whereas like they know that like they will buy the stock and they can sell the stock immediately, so they don't want to take like 6 months loan or 1 year loan. So they just need this working capital amount just for a month. So I have often seen like these gold loans big time increasing like in terms of demand before every festival. So most of the traders, most of the business people, whenever like they want to increase the stock, so whenever like they want to buy more stock in the shop, so they take like loans and for a short term for 1 month or 2 months, and as soon as like they get the money, they will immediately repay. I think gold loan has one advantage like for the customer. So despite fintech and all, like because fintech you can raise a loan in 5 minutes, but again you have many other requirements to fulfill. But like if somebody has a gold to pledge, I think like that is the only loan where one can raise in less than 5 minutes. So I think like most of the emergency needs, including working capital, for example, low-income households, they will not have savings. Somebody has met an accident and they go to hospital and the surgery has to be conducted right away. So I think like that time, like it's only the gold loan which can help them. And somebody is sick, some surgery has to be conducted, like they come to gold loan company to take the gold loan. Somebody has constructed a house and they estimated that like it will cost them 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs, but again like they are left with some small works, and there is a requirement of some additional 50,000. So most of these emergency unplanned requirements and even some of the planned requirements that they need loan for short term, so they approach gold loan companies. Here I think like in gold loan company, so since like the security is almost like 133%, because the customer walks into the branch with 100 rupees worth of gold and we end up giving only 75 rupees. And here the security is liquid. So if the customer doesn't repay, I think like we will give her sufficient time, we will mentor her, like we will educate her that like it is your responsibility to take back the gold and leverage further. But however, like because there is absolutely no credit losses. So within financial services, if at all like there is an asset class, and when I say like there are no credit losses, it is not only true for Keertana, but like it is true for the industry. Like none of the gold loan companies ever had any sort of credit loss. I think the highest credit losses gold loan companies so far reported is 0.6%.
That's a wonderful figure. So we now have got the details about the gold loans. So it's basically somebody for their businesses, for short-term loans, somebody for medical emergency, they can avail these gold loans. For the group loans also, you mentioned that it's a group of women who would basically give a guarantee for a loan, which will be required by probably a member of that particular group. We haven't heard about MSME loans. So I think if you can, share some perspective on the MSME loans, and with that, the size of the gold loans, MSME loans and group loans that Keertana has disbursed till date.
Sure. So MSME has two kinds of products. One is individual business loans and also micro lab. So often what I have seen like in the last 2 decades of my experience in microfinance is some of the women like they graduate from microfinance loans. So initially when they started, like their requirement used to be 30,000, 40,000. But over a period of time, if somebody has really done very well in the business, so if somebody has, like, say, for example, 6 buffaloes or 6 cows, and now like she wants to add like 4 more, so that like her monthly income can be almost like 50,000 to 60,000. In such a situation, if she is availing loans from microfinance organizations, what happens is, like, in order to get like 2 lakh loan, she has to approach like 4 or 5 different MFIs. And again, like, then she will be part of 4 or 5 different groups. And some of the MFIs, like, they collect installment weekly, some they collect fortnightly, some they collect like monthly. So what happens is, like, she end up spending most of her time in terms of attending these meetings and managing like all these groups and paying her installments, because she is not able to get like 1.5 lakh or 2 lakh loan from one single source, despite the fact that her income is like 60,000-70,000 rupees per month. She right now, like, since she doesn't have any better choice, she is still continuing to borrow from 5 or 6 MFIs. So in order to address the requirements of those women who have graduated from microfinance to individual loans, this particular product has been designed. So I think, like, when and again, these women to whom that, like, we are giving individual loans, they might have repaid at least like 20 microfinance loans in the last like several years. So they have
a track record of repayment also.
Yeah, they have strong credit history, and they understand their own cash flows, and like and we can see like how much installment that they have paid like to 4 or 5 different MFIs. But in order to create ease and access to higher capital, this product has been designed. So these are individual loans, and again, when we started these individual loans, some of the households, like, they came up with a higher requirement saying that so we want to construct a house, like we need 4 lakhs. But again, 4 lakhs unsecured is always risky. So then we designed this micro lab.
Understood. So, taking a stretch out of that point that you mentioned, the credit history of the entrepreneurs, credit history of the borrowers. We've seen, most of the NBFCs that we have spoken to till date, they have been leveraging technology to find the deserving borrower and give them the requisite amount of capital. It'll be interesting to know how Keertana is, leveraging on technology to be able to assess the credit worthiness of the borrowers, and streamlining and probably speeding up the entire disbursal timelines, making it a more efficient businesses. Your views on it, Padmaja ma'am?
Yeah, in fact, like these women, the kind of credit histories that they have developed for themselves. So it's a wonderful. So I think, like, while the credit bureaus started doing the bureau check of all these microfinance borrowers, it started after 2010. Like from 2012 onwards, any loan given to the low-income women is getting reported to credit bureau.
Right.
So if I do the bureau check, like, I will get to know all the details in terms of how many loans like these women have taken, how many loans are closed, how many active loans that she has, and when did these loans are being availed by her, and what is the installment that she is paying, whether like she had any bad history in terms of any overdue got reported, whether any loan was written off. I think they have credit history which is like much stronger and better than you and I have. So like they have been raising loans like all through their life, and they have that kind of requirement because they start with one buffalo, and again, like after 10 years, if you go and see, they will have a huge dairy farm, like 10 buffaloes. I think like it's a great thing. So that is not an issue. And again, so we have set up a rule engine. So wherein like there is absolutely no manual intervention in either sanctioning or rejecting the loan. So the minute that we update KYC details of each borrower, I think there is a seamless integration of our system with the bureau. So we are using thrift high mark, and within seconds, like the bureau check gets done. And in case like the borrower has any write-off, any overdue, then like the loan will get automatically rejected, and the branch manager just cannot move further with that particular loan.
So how many branches do you have? If you can talk about the scale, number of employees, branches, amount disbursed till date, that will give a perspective about the scale of Keertana.
Yeah, as I mentioned, like we have three verticals. One is gold loan, one is MSME, and the third one is group loans. All these three different products are very different from each other. So the gold loan branch requires a different kind of infrastructure, whereas group loans like require a different kind of infrastructure. For example, like gold loan branch, you have to attract walk-in customers. So you cannot have gold loan branch in a residential area. You need to have gold loan branch in a commercial area where people can see the signage and get into the branch if they have any sort of requirement. When it comes to gold loans, we don't expect clients to walk in. Instead, like our loan officers, day in and day out, like they reach out to the prospective women. So like every village has a different location where like low income people reside. So our loan officers reach out to their doorstep and they check with them whether they have any sort of loan requirement. So when it comes to group loan branches, they're more residential because the staff reside in the branches, because they have to go to field by 7 o'clock in the morning, because after 9:30 these women are not available, they go for the work. So as such, like the gold loan branches are different, MSME branches are different, and group loan branches are different. So in the last 16 months, we are able to set up, we are able to open 255 branches, and out of that, like 250 branches are almost operating.
That's the great statistic. And what is the total amount which has been disbursed across all these three product categories?
Cumulatively, like in the last 16 months, we disbursed 2,350 crores.
And that is all across this gold loans, MSME loans, and
MSME, yeah. And this year the plan is to disburse, this year alone the plan is to disburse 2,000 crore, and I think we are moving ahead in the right direction. So last year, like it was a first year in terms of starting operations, the focus was more in terms of building systems, processes, internal controls, and again the technology that you have to make sure. So the entire focus was in terms of building the strong foundation on which like we can just grow. This is the first year in order to demonstrate the real growth for us.
Got it. So for our viewers today, it's a wonderful story that we are getting to know, right? Credit disbursal or credit being made available to the underserved segment of the society. It's a huge untapped market, underserved market. And once we start deploying capital at that level, the pyramid of the country starts going up, and we start moving from being a developed nation, right? Because the bottom of the pyramid is the widest one, and that is where credit is required to empower women, especially women, right? So that they can drive their enterprises forward. Just a brief snapshot of Keertana's numbers and the products. So Keertana was started in 2022 by Mrs. Padmaja Reddy, a veteran industry leader with extremely demonstrated track record of building successful NBFCs. Her previous NBFC was Spandana. Now she's scaling up Keertana. 3 products: gold loans, MSME loans, and group loans. Out of that, total number of branches that operates and provides these loans are 255, out of which 250 are already functional. Cumulatively, over the past 16 months, the company has disbursed 2,350 crores, and this year alone, the target is to disburse 2,000 crores worth of loans to this segment of the market. So if we can hear a little bit about your revenue and PAT numbers, I know it is very early on in your business, yet it has been a phenomenal growth with respect to this segment. No doubt about it. But if you could share, revenue numbers for the last financial, maybe the PAT for the last financial, and the NPA levels, right? If you could share the NPAs across the three segments of the products that you have.
Yeah, I think so. Last year, when we started business in April, so we broke even in the very first month. It is quite unusual, but again, that has come from the experience, I guess.
Itself.
Yeah, in the first month itself, we made 70 lakh.
Positive mark for any business. I have seen founders, institutions who have literally struggled, to be able to break even, right? And the struggle is real because business is so dynamic, so volatile, right? It really takes a veteran to be able to put in the right levers and turn the business, break even on the very first month. That's a phenomenal achievement. Yeah, please share.
I was backed by 25 years of experience, and I was always instrumental in terms of setting many benchmarks for the microfinance industry in terms of efficiency, productivity, and profitability.
Right.
So when I started back then, the industry thought leaders were proudly saying that it takes 5 years to break even. But again, back then, I was not in a position to understand P&L, balance sheet, and all that. So it's only post-rating, they told us that we broke even in the first year itself. But now, since this is a second entrepreneurial stint, so we made a record in terms of breaking even in the very first month. First quarter profit was 2 crore last year, and whereas this year, I'm just comparing the Q1 of FY23 with Q1 of FY24, last year and this year. So last year, a quarterly PAT was 2 crore, and this year, quarterly PAT was 12 crore. So from 2 crore per quarter, it has increased to 12 crore per quarter. And
600% jump in the PAT.
Yeah, and our average portfolio last year was 400 crore. On 400 crore average AUM, so we made 23 crore PAT last year. So that being the first year. This year the expectation is that we started with the 600 crore, and we will be hitting 1500 crore by this year end. So which is 2,100 crore, and the average AUM for the year is 1,050 crore. So between 6 to 7% ROA, we are expecting to make a profit of 60 to 70 crore for the current year. I think the revenue has grown by almost 350%. So the revenue model works like this. So basically, I think since we are addressing the requirements of low income people, so general questions asked about it are, so when you are getting 26%, 28% yield, what is there for the poor people to make any money after paying you 26%, 28%? So this is something that we need to understand. For example, we go to the market, so we see a vegetable vendor, right? And vegetable vendors, for example, they go in the morning and they buy tomatoes. So of course now the tomatoes price is very high. Generally, they buy tomatoes for 5 rupees and they sell tomatoes for 10 rupees. So if they buy tomatoes for 500 rupees, and they will sell the same tomatoes for 1,000 rupees. And what is the profit earned by a vegetable vendor in a day? It is 100%, right? So it's 100%. And if you annualize that, So it is 36,500% return that she made on her vegetable business. But again, these small businesses, if the return percent is very high, but the absolute number is very, very small. So when the businesses grow, when the volume increases, I think your profit margin will come down and your absolute profit will increase. So when somebody is making a return of 36,500%, if she has to pay 27% or 28%, it doesn't really hit her at all. But what matters is, in order to buy these tomatoes in the morning, she needs this 500 rupees. Only if she has this 500 rupees, she will be able to earn another 500 on this 500. So access to capital is very important, but their ability in terms of paying higher interest is not a concern at all. So we get a yield of 28% overall, and our financial cost is like a 12%, and our operating cost is 6%. So we have 10% pre-provision and pre-tax profit, and post-tax we are making around the 7%. And again, earlier, you asked me about NPAs. I think it is too early. So we are yet to see a delinquency. All the loans that we disbursed in the last 16 months, we got 100% repayment rate. I think this is possible because of the committed, and also thanks to my team who are at the ground level. So we have zero tolerance towards delinquency. But again, so I'm not saying that we will be able to maintain the same kind of the collection efficiency throughout. But again, in the last 16 months, the portfolio quality has been excellent. So though it's zero, I think overall on 800 crore, we have some 4 lakhs, the loans that we received from other entity. So but again, so we have been building provision. So this year our plan is to make almost 1% provision. So in case of any future risk, we will be able to absorb them.
Got it. Now, a quick question to you, Prashant. And the question is, as the investment banker, Oxyzo as the investment banker for Keertana, right? What is it at the very broad level picture that you found very, very, promising in Keertana, right? As the investment banker, and then, how do you look at Keertana as an entity? What is your thesis on Keertana? If you can share briefly on that.
Absolutely, Abhijit. So I think just being besides an investment banker to Keertana, we have also been a lender to Keertana. From our NBFC, which is Oxyzo Financial Services, we have had an active exposure in the range of 40 to 50 crores for the last 15 months or so, right? So our understanding of their business actually goes about 1.5 years back. And because you asked this question in terms of what's our thesis on them, when we actually first sort of did our transaction with Keertana, there are 3 to 4 things that actually stood out. And one, and I think that your audience will also appreciate, is the fact that the commitment and the experience that the founding team brings, right? The passion with which ma'am has actually spoken, and the deep understanding of the markets that there are, right? It is very difficult to actually build a micro lending business in a very first month to be profitable, right? If you look at the costs associated with it, you have to open about 25 to 30 branches on the very first day.
Right.
Each branch would have 3 to 4 people, right? You cannot disperse that kind of volume within the first month to actually become profitable, which is you lend at 28%, you borrow capital at 14%, then you have to cover for your people costs and everything to become profitable, right? What was remarkably different from day one has been that tenacity to actually absorbing a lot of knowledge that they had, putting it on the ground, and then turning it out profitable on a individual transaction that they did. So every 50,000 loan, 1 lakh loan that they did, the philosophy always was that every loan should be profitable. If every loan is profitable, then the entity will be profitable, right? And that is something that is remarkably different that we found, right? The second thing, Abhijit, is the fact that despite being a very experienced promoter, a lot of execution has to happen by people on the ground, right? And you are giving 1 lakh rupee loans, and you give like hundreds of loans every day. Right. And every transaction with the end customer needs to have a lot of standardization. And what we really saw on the ground, and I actually want to mention this, we actually went to 3 of the remote branches in Andhra Pradesh, Guntur district. And our findings were that a lot of standardization of process was already there, right? So even if ma'am has said that it's a entity which is only 16 months of vintage, in terms of the execution on the ground and the maturity of the processes, the entire Spandana experience of 20 years was actually being visible on the ground. So your vintage might be 16, but if you're behaving like a 10-year-old matured business, then obviously a lot of processes get set up right, and that's what we saw. I'll just give you an anecdote, right? It is very simple to say I'm in the business of lending against gold. But a very simple part of this is that is your gold that you are collecting from borrowers safe? And what we saw is the fact that within the first month of the operations, at each of their branches, they had actually set up vaults. In those vaults, the gold was getting stored. And as a branch manager, you cannot just one fine hour open the vault and take the gold out. You had to actually, through tech, raise an OTP request to the head office, and then the head office will actually send you an OTP, and only then the vault will open, right? So the the level of monitoring, compliance, and everything that was there in terms of a maturity level is something that really stood out for us. And the third thing, Abhijit, is the fact that it's the fastest gold loan company in India in terms of growth and profitability, right? In terms of unit economics, you look at any 1 lakh ticket size lending NBFC in India, they operate at costs of 10% and above. Yeah. And as ma'am mentioned out, in Keertana's case, it's been 6%. The reason is you know which market to lend at, what kind of borrowers you want to have, what kind of costs you can control, what kind of yields you can command, right? So I think a lot of experience sits there, and a lot of execution sort of makes that experience turn around into a successful franchise. So I think those are the things that stood out for us. And I think that's been a hallmark of our assessment.
So where all is Keertana's presence in the country? When you did the due diligence, if you can share, with the viewers where all.
So I think Andhra Pradesh and Telangana is what their home territory is, and now they're actually expanding into some of the other southern states, which are Karnataka as well as Tamil Nadu, with the same velocity. I think and it's a very diversified business, because if someone needs a gold loan, an emergency 6 months loan, then they have a product. If you need a microfinance 2-year loan, say 50,000 on a group guarantee, then there's a product. And if there's an independent 2 lakh business loan that needs to be taken by a borrower, then have a product. So the entire bouquet of products is also something which is very complementary, and if you actually execute it, then it's great, right? So, and what typically happens is lending, Abhijit, is you tend to lose your customer very fast. Right. But today I have seen a customer say in Keertana taking 2 gold loans of 50,000 each and paying back, and the third time it's very easy for you to say that, okay, this is a creditworthy customer. Maybe an unsecured 60,000-70,000 loan is something that I can give, right? So the quality of information that's stacking up, and you can do repeat transactions, retain your customer, keep them engaged. That kind of tenacity and that kind of product offering is also something which is there for them to actually capture the market.
Got it. A question to you, Padmaja ji. The question is, so how much debt capital has Keertana raised to deploy in the market, and if you could share some details around it.
Sure. So far, we raised about 900 crore, but whereas this year the requirement is to raise 1,200 crore to be able to build a 1,500 crore AUM. So thanks to Oxyzo. So as you were saying, they are our investment bankers. I think they are our lender, they are our investment banker. More than anything, so in the very first incident that like we met. So there was a kind of like a strategic partnership that we were able to sense with each other. And I think the visibility that like we have today in terms of like going to the market and raising money through capital markets. So I want to really thank Oxyzo for their support. And again, we have 34 lenders onboarded in the last 15 months. And there are banks like there are NBFCs and there are EIFs that we have raised the money.
The question to you, Prashant, is, has Keertana raised capital via bonds? If yes, then if you can share some details like what had been the minimum ticket size of these bonds or debentures and, tenure and rating, whether they were secured, unsecured.
So Abhijit, this is the third transaction that's happening for them through bonds. There were 2 earlier transactions that have happened. All the 3 transactions are rated BBB by CRISIL. All the 3 transactions are secured. The security here is essentially the underlying loans that Keertana gives to its borrowers. In this particular transaction, bond transaction, the security is actually the gold loans that they are giving further to their borrowers. So it's essentially very secured. The minimum ticket size for investment is in multiples of 1 lakh. The first 2 transactions also had the same thing in terms of the structure, and it's a 19-month transaction where essentially as an investor, as a retail investor, if you invest every 3 months, you get your principal back 1/6, and every month you actually get your interest back, right? So that's the kind of transaction and security that is there, along with other things.
Okay, so if I have understood it correctly, the latest tranche of debentures to which Keertana has raised capital, the minimum ticket size would be 1 lakh. The tenure would be 19 months, so it's a fairly short tenure. The coupon is 13%, right? That's what you mentioned?
Yes.
13%. And it's a BBB rated by CRISIL, and it is a secured debenture. Got it?
Yes.
Got it. So, Prashant, one quick question for you. It's like for your institution, right, Oxyzo, maybe you can share a bit of perspective about your institution, like what is the total amount of AUM Oxyzo has enabled institutions in raise, number of employees, and your presence in the country, right? It would be good to know so that, we know the full picture.
Absolutely, Abhijit. So we actually are lenders to SMEs and enterprises. So we lend to SMEs, NBFCs as well as corporates. We manage assets worth about 6,000 odd crores. As an NBFC, we actually started lending to these enterprises and SMEs about 7 years back. We have about 15 offices spread across the nation, about 500 people. And we are actually rated A+ by CRISIL. And within this lending business, now we are actually creating a financial services business, because we feel that with 7 years of great understanding of some of our customers, we can actually take some of them to different kinds of investors, retail to institution, and sort of raise debt for them, and in fact help some of these enterprises to sort of quickly grow and become large enterprises and large corporates of the future, right? So that's that's the business that we do in Oxyzo. This is our third transaction that we are doing with Keertana, and besides Keertana, we have done a lot of BBB negative to A-rated NBFCs and SME transactions, where we act as merchant bankers or investment bankers for large institutions and investors to invest.
Got it. Thanks, Prashant, for sharing that. Padmaja ji, one last question to you before we move on to the Q&A session. What is the future roadmap for Keertana that you foresee? How you're looking to scale up the business further and probably spread it across the entire country, or enter into newer segments of lending products, right? If you could share your perspective on that.
As Prashant mentioned, that like we have bouquet of products for the low income segment. So we want to become the preferred service provider for the low income segment. So we are like very agile, and like we are very dynamic in terms of changing products. I think like it was in April we started with gold loans. Soon realized that like an NBFC should not remain as a monoline. So each product has like its own strengths and it has its own areas of concern. All the risk management experts, rating agencies, they have always been advocating, saying that one has to diversify their business geographically so that like you are under control. But again, we have seen like some of the cycles during demand, like it was a nationwide problem. Whatever the delinquency that we have seen during that time, so it happened across the country. So even if you are like very well diversified also, so you were not able to find a solution in it. And then again, Corona, like it was a global level issue, right?
Right.
So if you are geographically diversified, it does not mean that like you have foolproof. But I always believed that like as an NBFC, you need to diversify yourself across segments and across products. To give you an example, like during Corona, while all banks, NBFCs, they stopped lending because like they were not present. We were not able to go to offices, and like there was lending has come to a complete freeze, right? But during gold loan companies, because like they did not require anything, so gold loan companies were allowed to open branches and serve the people, and most of the people like who required loan just in half an hour, like just in a day, I think like the gold loan companies have really done very well. And again, at the same time, I'm not saying that like gold loan doesn't have any area of concern. But we soon realized that we should not remain as a monoline. So that is how like two more verticals are added. Now I think like we will continue to. It's an organization which is evolving, right? So it doesn't stop like anyway. It will continue to evolve, and we will keep adding like more and more products. I think like in the areas wherever we are operating, any low income household, I think they should be able to get all their credit solutions like from Keertana. So that is the mission. But in terms of numbers, I think by 2025 we are looking at 3,000 crore AUM, and that is when like we might really go to the market.
So by going to the market, you mean going for IPO?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So that's a wonderful picture of scale up, right? I think that's a very deep learning for all NBFCs from what you just said, that it's very essential for an NBFC to focus across two primary factors. One, not to build a monoline business in NBFC, to diversify across various segments, various products, and also not to be, to look at actually scaling up across the country, across different locations. So diversification is on both sides, and the NBFC gets into a very strong position of being able to deliver to both its investors and borrowers. Great learning. So now with that, I think we'll move on to the questions that our viewers have asked. First question is from Shubhit. The question is Keertana planning to do any tie-ups with the commercial banks to have a huge reach? Also, how Keertana is managing gold safety? Do you have vault facility, or have you done the tie-ups with any bank? I think one part was already answered by Prashant, that there is definitely a vault facility, safe and secure. Nobody can access it unless it is, it's OTP based, access control which has been built. But for the other parts like tie-ups with commercial banks, which are those banks, if you can mention, and managing safety around gold, the infrastructure that you might have, if you could share a bit more details on that.
Yeah, in terms of partnership with banks like for BC and also co-lending arrangement, so we are not eager. So basically like the AUM is very small. We want to build the balance sheet like for ourselves. And if you have any sort of debt for funding, of course, like it becomes an obvious choice for you to partner with banks. fortunately, with the support of Oxyzo, we are able to raise like funding whatever is required for the current year. So as such, that is not a priority in terms of getting into BC arrangement or co-lending arrangement. But however, we are open. So we have received almost 15 to 20 sanctions from various NBFCs, but we have not really shown any interest. We decided that we need to build our own balance sheet. And we need to focus on our financial performance because times are good and we should be able to build the balance sheet strength to be able to absorb any sort of future risks or future shocks. So in co-lending or BC, I think your margins are secured, so you will have very limited margin. But again, if you are not in a position to raise the required capital, you have no choice. But fortunately, since we are able to raise funds, whatever is required for us to move on in terms of lending, so we are not, that's not a priority at this point in time. And of course, like you mentioned, so I think the walls, so for example, even if there is a thief, even if there is an attack, so let us assume that in one of the branches, some 3-4 people came to the branch and they have put a gunpoint to the branch manager. The branch manager can safely hand over all the keys to the thief, saying that you please go and open the locker and take away the entire gold. Because he just cannot open the locker.
Right.
So while we sit in Hyderabad, we hold the digital key and without approval, despite they having all necessary keys, no vault cannot be opened. And it's a 24/7 surveillance. It's a direct streaming. It is very, very clear. I think while some of the gold loan companies, they have a huge of technology to source the clients, but we have huge of technology big time in terms of building internal controls. Because if you look at other secure loans, the security stays with the borrower, right? So if I take a home loan, I can continue to stay in the same home. So the lender doesn't come and stay in my house, right? Since it's mortgaged to the lender.
Yes.
But the gold, it's a peculiar quality. The security moves from the borrower to the lender, but it comes with a responsibility, and you are the custodian for that gold.
Correct.
Till you give it back safely, you are responsible. So
Absolutely.
I think we have used the technology big time to build controls around that.
I think that's a very, very pertinent point, and I think it's one of the unique examples of technology being used to build a solid infrastructure around safety of golds. That definitely answers that question. The next question is from Mr. Rishidhar, and the question is: does Keertana have any external equity investors? What is the net worth as of June 2023? If you are okay with that question.
Yeah. So we don't have an external investor. I think basically whatever the money that I made from my previous company, so I have nothing else to do with that money.
I'll just pause you over there, ma'am. I will add my question also over here. I think there was a block trade of shares of Spandana which was executed by the promoter, which is you, just some time back, right? So probably this question would also be opportunity at this point to share some insights on that regarding this transaction and the funds, right? So if you could share your perspective.
Yeah, so far we don't have any external investor, and by God's grace, whatever is the equity required to support the current growth, to that extent, so I have funds. So I initially infused about 150 crore, and I think Spandana's IPO was done in August 2019. So during that time, I sold some of my stock, and I was left with some 120 crore. So the entire 120 crore has been infused as equity initially. And again, when there was a further requirement of equity, and I could not sell Spandana stock because the stock was not doing good. So I raised a 75 crore loan from IAFL, so by pledging my Spandana shares, and I infused another 70 crore. So far, 190 crore has been infused by me. And yes, you are right, there was a block deal that was done by me. So I got another 100 crore. I think that 100 crore is to infuse in Keertana only. So we have very small family, and we are not creative in terms of how to spend money. Our creativity is very, very low. It's only the investment is moving from Spandana to Keertana. So there are so many interests people have expressed in terms of wanting to invest in Keertana, because this year I think the numbers are pretty good. So on 28% yield, the pre-tax ROE is 10%, post-tax ROE will be around 7%, and even if we leverage 4 times, I think our ROE will be 28%. Quite a few have expressed their interest to invest in Keertana, but again I said that at this point in time, it is not required. We will definitely get back to you whenever there is a requirement. So I still continue to hold some, I think 85 lakh shares in Spandana. So it is worth I think 700 crore.
Got it. So I think that actually shows, the founder's strong commitment towards building the enterprise, right? And this is what scales up any company, right? I mean, you have put in everything that you have into building Keertana, and I can see the heaps of praise that's coming in over here from our viewers over here for the great work that Keertana is doing in serving the market, and the way the MSME sector is being served by Keertana through the various product lines, and your strong commitment, right, to nation building at large through your institution Keertana. So I think
May I add something here? I think your audience also the fact that ma'am actually had a surgery 2 days back, and I think the commitment that comes to building this business is also evidenced in this, that despite having a surgery 2 days back, she's today alive, and I can surely see on her face a little bit pain while she's speaking. But I think that also speaks volumes about the passion that the founder has, and despite 25 years of having built multiple organizations, she still feels towards the business and towards that cause of actually building something from scratch again at this age. I think so that itself is something that I thought your audience.
Thank you, Prashant.
So thank you, Padmaja ji, for taking us through this wonderful journey of building Keertana. The way you are dedicated and passionate about serving the underserved segment of the society, which is the largest segment. And thanks, Prashant, for being here in sharing your perspectives, valuable perspectives on Keertana. To our viewers, I'm sure we have learned a lot about the microfinance lending business, how Keertana is revolutionizing this area, right, through its cutting edge technology, through the process and controls led by Mrs. Padmaja Reddy, with her huge wisdom and leadership skills, taking it forward. So thank you very much for your time, and thanks to all our viewers for their viewership. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abhijit.
My pleasure. Thank you, Abhijit.
Investments in debt securities are subject to risks. Read all the offer-related documents carefully.